Okay, so we're at a stage now where we really need to have a look at this wonderful thing called the circle of fifths. The circle of fifths is a very simple way of remembering what notes belong to what scale. Now, of course, we can always work out the amount of notes in between by looking at our formulas for the major and for the minor. We could apply that to the modes as well. Essentially, the major, of course, is tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Do that again. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Minor, again, starting from a different position, from the sixth. Tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone. Now that's all very well, but whatever key we're in, surely we don't want to have to count everything out in that way. And this is where the circle of fifths come in. So, let's take a look. Here is a circle of fifths diagram. Now this is a very, very easy way of remembering what notes belong to what major or minor scale. Now why is this important? It's important because from those notes we can work out what the chords are most likely to be. The basic building blocks. Now of course we're not necessarily just going to use the chords that belong to the diatonic. We might want to take some other chords and bring them into the equation. And of course there are lots of different ways we can do that. What this is going to do though is it's going to help us understand why certain things are going to sound right to our ear. Now essentially the circle of fifths breaks up all of our scales and puts them into this rather nice chart. It's called the circle of fifths because if I were to count on my keyboard, the intervals are 5 away from each other. So let's take a look. As with all music, we always start in our neutral key, the key of C. It doesn't have any of these black notes, these in-between notes. By the way, these in-between notes are known as accidentals. Accidental is the term given to anything that is not one of the white keys. They sit outside of the scale. Now, if we take a look at the circle of fifths, and we take a look at C, just here, we move this way around, we can see that the next note is G. Now it just so happens that G is the fifth note, the perfect fifth of the key of C. Now what happens when we get to that note? Well, here's an interesting thing. What happens is that one of our white notes in that scale is sharpened. What do I mean? Well, listen, let me play the scale of G. That note there, F sharp, is sharpened. One note is sharpened. If I carry on round to the next fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the major scale of G, I get the note of D. If I play a scale of D major, I get this. There are two black notes in that scale, two sharps. Are you beginning to see what's happening? Let's go to the next one. A. A is the fifth note of the scale of D, the circle of fifths. Let me play the notes that belong to A. Three sharps or black notes. That one, and that one. Now, let's look back at our diagram. What's actually happening is that the same note is actually staying each time. So look, in G we have an F sharp. The F has become sharpened. In D, the F is still sharpened, but we've added another sharpened note. And it's this note here. And that's the note of C. Okay? Let's just look at the keyboard again and just make sure that you're familiar with the fact that those notes are the C sharp and the F sharp. Now let's look at it. There's F, so this is F sharp, one between G and F. F sharp. Keep going up. There's C, that's C sharp. Now why don't I call this note a D flat, or this note a G flat? That's because everything on this side of the circle of fifths is known as a sharpened key. We call each one of those black accidentals a sharp. On this side of the circle of fifths, we call them flats. Now, there's a simple reason for why we do this, and it's all to do with notation. In notation, there must be one particular note on every line that we use. We can't have two notes on the same line because it would be just too difficult to read. Therefore, we have to keep everything at the same distance between each other. And that's why we have sharpened keys and flattened keys. So in this grid, all of these become sharpened. So I can look at the key of E and I can see there are 4 sharps. I can look at the key of F and see there's 1 flat. So this becomes kind of pivotal. There's something odd that happens with these 3 keys at the bottom. They are known as the inharmonic keys, and essentially we can write them out in 2 different ways. Now when we first start looking at the circle of fifths, these ones can become very complicated, because to make one of the notes appear on each line, we have to do something a little bit strange. We have to call some of the notes that we're used to seeing as a non-black note as a sharp or flat. Now that is complicated, and it's certainly not something that I would start to go into when we are beginning to look at the circle of fifths. But just be aware that there are two names for the key of B, F sharp, C sharp. Or another way you could look at it, another name for D flat, G flat, or C flat. But this is the most important thing to remember when looking at the circle of fifths. We add one, another, 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 another. So I'm hoping that you're starting to understand that this is just a formula. The formula is how we add the notes. For me, the easiest way to remember how these notes are added and changed is to go by the saying, Father Charlie goes down and ends battle. And that's the order at which the notes are sharpened. So we know that there's one sharp in G. Father, F. F is sharpened. In D, two notes are sharpened. Father, Charlie, F and C. In the note of A, the key of A, Father, Charlie, goes. Father, Charlie, goes down. Father, Charlie, goes down and Father, Charlie, goes down and ends. Father, Charlie, goes down and ends battle. It's the order in which the sharps are added. Now, if you're keen in terms of recognition, you'll notice that this actually follows the same pattern as well. Look, if I look at C, it goes F, Father Charlie, goes down and ends battle. So it follows this pattern even on the grid. Now that's for sharps. If we're looking at flats, it goes the other way round. B, B. Battle ends and down goes Charlie's father. Battle ends, battle ends, and battle ends and down, battle ends and down goes, battle ends and down goes Charlie, battle ends and down goes Charlie's father. All the circle of fifth is doing is telling us what the names of the notes are if we are following our tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. And it also gives us our relative or natural minor, which of course is also a mode, and it's known as the Aeolian mode number 6. There's no quick way of learning these. There's no right and wrong way of learning these. But if you're serious about understanding how your diatonic chords are going to work, I think it's really essential that you spend some time taking a look and working out what the actual notes are that belong to each major and minor key. So I believe that learning the circle of fifths will open up a different world for understanding what notes belong. Now, of course, this really should be kind of done in a combination of playing an instrument, because one of the things that becomes a lot easier is the fact that once you understand what those shapes are, then you'll have the muscle memory to remember them. It's easier on guitar because the shapes remain exactly the same. On a keyboard we have to move in and out of the actual black notes, and the keyboard obviously looks different. But always remember that the same distance remains between the notes. So try to count the distance between notes rather than visually be aware of what your pattern looks like. That way you'll be able to relate things to the intervals. Now everything is going to come out of this. So the fundamental is going to be a brilliant building block in which to start your chord construction. What I want to look at next is some of those more interesting chords where we can actually go further than just one octave. We can go into sevenths and nines, and we can go into different flavors. There's no wrongs and rights in music, but the reason for doing this kind of learning is that it's going to facilitate you with a lot more knowledge and power of getting what you want in your head, or discovering something when you're jamming that will sound cool a lot quicker. Okay? Whether you choose to ignore the kind of traditional rules in music or not, it can't hurt to have knowledge that you can call on should you need it.